Hey, welcome to Old Ass Movie Reviews. I'm Scott. There's Dave. We have changed positions. So
I noticed
there
that the
you
other
go.
day when I'm watching the show. I'm like, what? I wish he would just make up his mind. Because I don't want to point down.
Now look,
That's just
Scott,
weird.
you're
I'm
right.
like, you're Scott. Hi,
Um,
Scott.
I do recommend you wear pants next time, Dave. I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry.
So sorry for the Hollywood Squares type moment right here, which is pretty awesome. We need a few more up here. Hey, we went back and revisited Steve Martin again with 1987's Roxanne, an adaptation of the story of Cyrano de Bergerac. I thought I had seen this movie before, but apparently I hadn't, or I completely forgot it. Pleasantly surprised, better than I thought it was going to be. I really enjoyed it. It was cute, it was fun, it was funny, and it was
very
just
funny.
It was really funny. And just looking at all the people that pop up in there, Fred Willard. Oh my God.
So many people.
There are, man.
Rich Rochovich, is that his name? Rich Rosovich. I can never pronounce Rosovich. He was always the good-looking guy back in the 80s. He never had any huge parts. This is probably the most I've ever seen him in a movie. Usually he plays smaller parts. And evidently he did it. He used to be an actor just for fun. Like he would go out and do a bit part here, but he's in Terminator. He's the guy in Terminator that goes after Arnold Schwarzenegger. When he's the boyfriend of her roommate.
Oh.
And I'm like, man, this guy was in all kinds of stuff back in the 80s.
Right.
I don't know if he's doing anything now or not. Shelley Duvall's in it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was a surprise.
Daryl Hannah, Steve Martin. I'm trying to think of who else. Like you already mentioned.
There's that one character actor, the little guy with the voice.
Michael Pollard.
Yes, well, we just talked about in something. Yeah. So, I was like, oh, there he is.
Scrooge.
Scrooge, yes.
Scrooge.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But this is a takeoff of, like you said, Cyrano de Bergerac. And I am going to do one spoiler. If you're a fan of that story, there is some good news. If I remember correctly, Cyrano dies in a duel in Cyrano de Bergerac, and he professes his love to Roxanne. She finds out what was going on, and then Cyrano dies. So it's the big romantic, ending, whatever. This one, Cece doesn't die.
No,
I was very happy about that.
I had never read the story nor the tale. Yeah, I love how they had that in there, and then Chris versus Christian and stuff like that. So I had to do a little research on it.
CD.
CD. Steve Martin was so likable in this. I mean, not saying he's not a likable character, but he was a cool dude. I mean, dude, when he did that insult battle, I mean, that was actually really freaking cool. And and people were cheering him on and everything. It was just like, but he was more upset over his nose than anybody else,
Yeah.
And that's what he had to come to terms with. He had to accept himself. And I thought that was pretty neat.
And I liked with his character, he was pretty much cool with himself, but he wouldn't let anybody make fun of his nose.
Right.
And that's I do think you were right though. He had a lot of
he had a lot of anger with it. Yeah, well, of course he did. I mean, did you see the size of that thing? I mean, it was a big honker.
What I like is when Rick Rosovich's character Chris finally meets him. Everybody's warning him, don't say anything about the Chief's nose. Don't say whatever you do. Don't even look at it. You're going to feel like you're not looking at it, but then you're going to realize you're not looking at it really hard or really close or whatever. And he plays that part when he looks at his nose because he just grabs him by the shoulders and he's like, oh my God, that's an enormous nose. What a huge nose. I mean, they told me it was big. And then everybody just runs down the street. Everybody else is running away. Like they don't want anything to do with it. And Rick Rosovich turns around, he looks, everybody's gone. He looks back at CD and he's like, oh crap, I'm going to get my ass beat. And the chief is just like, hey, I'm in a good mood. You want to play a game of pool?
Yeah, he
And
was
the guy's
perfectly
like,
fine.
I've just survived something. And from that point on, they're kind of friends to each other.
He plays the perfect bimbo. The
Yeah. Yeah. The
the
big dumb
dumb
guy.
blonde. Yeah, he is
Yeah.
a big dumb guy, and he really plays it up well, and it's so funny. And I'm screaming the whole time that CD's doing all of this for this guy, and it's because he's afraid to, and
Yeah.
that's what you
Terrified.
see. Yeah, but he
Yeah.
almost makes it really bad, of course.
And you understand what if folks you aren't familiar with the story of Cyrano was a sword fighter. I think he was a musketeer, if memory serves.
I,
He was but he had an extremely long nose. But he had the heart of a lover. He had the soul of a poet. And Rick Rossovich is this big, dumb, good-looking guy, and he's just not really smart. Roxanne is this beautiful woman. She's very smart. She's looking for a comet. They're going to name it a comet. And she meets CD, and they're talking and they're having fun and they're really hitting it off. But she sees
mhm.
Chris, the character Chris, across the bar, and she's like, "Wow, he's really good looking." All her girlfriends are like, "Oh, he's really good looking." And Chris sees her, and she smiles at him, and
He
he
goes and
cannot
throws up.
talk. Any woman that has got brains, or any woman who's like just like more than he can deal with, he just gets nervous and he throws up. And that's like you said, that's exactly what he does. And he does it a couple times in the show.
Oh
It's
yeah.
absolutely hysterical. But somehow he finagles Steve Martin's character to write poetry. In Cyrano writes poetry. He hides behind a bush and he tells the young lover what to say to Roxanne so he can become her lover. And the same
Okay.
story happens. And I'm sitting there watching this like, why would you do this? Oh my God, that
I
is the
know.
stupidest thing to do.
But it really sets up a funny joke when he had the earpiece and he's like, car 31, possible 502 in progress. And it's like, what? He's such an idiot. He's repeating anything he hears. And it's
Anything he's
just,
hearing in the earpiece.
he's
Oh
such
my
a
God.
dummy. It was so funny.
But and of course you have Daryl Hannah, who at this time in '87, she's probably in her late 20s, maybe, or maybe
Mhm.
mid to late 20s. A goddess. I mean, she
Yeah.
was just beautiful. And then you have Steve Martin with the long nose, and then you have Rick Rossovich with big shoulders, arms, the perfect blonde
Yeah.
hair.
Now let me bring something in here that I didn't think of until you mentioned this right now. If you would tell me we're going to do a romantic comedy and I want Steve Martin and Daryl Hannah, I would scratch my head.
Yeah.
But their chemistry is there. I mean, I bought every bit of it. And it's like, that was great casting.
And this is another one that I've seen. When you see this movie, you wonder, why didn't these two do another romantic
Yeah,
comedy or
absolutely.
another comedy together? Because
Or
they teamed
anything
up
together.
really well. They paired up
Yeah.
very well on camera.
Yes, they
Um,
did.
and I feel really bad because Shelley Duvall was in this, and she was the
Mhm.
perfect sidekick for Steve Martin.
Oh, yeah.
And there's nothing. I mean, she doesn't do anything anymore. I have no idea why. I
Yeah.
know she's gotten old. She was probably fairly old at this point. I mean,
Yeah. She's still
she's
around. I'm not
she's got
sure
to be in
what
her
she's
70s
doing,
by
but yeah.
But yeah, she's really good in this. Everybody, Damon Wayans is in
I
this.
know. It's a
One of
very
the
young
firemen. And
Homie
I
the Clown.
forgot shit, how old do you think he was in this? Maybe
In his
20?
early 20s, early 20s. He
Early
was
20s.
young. Yeah.
But it's a good movie. It's the chemistry for all of these characters, the
It's,
side characters that are the firemen,
oh my God. Talk about
um,
a bumbling cast of firemen. Oh,
her friends, all the girls that were her friends.
yeah.
And then when Rick Rossovich meets the bartender, and they're just hitting
Oh,
it off and talking. And they are like the perfect couple. You don't even feel bad for, not even mad at his character for
no.
falling for her. because she's a nice girl. She's, she's not trying to
They
screw anybody over. They
again,
just
good
click
casting. It
automatically.
just clicked, and that
Yeah.
was it.
But the whole story is basically Steve Martin's character, CD, gets Rick Rossovich's character, Chris, into bed with Roxanne, who is Daryl Hannah. And Daryl Hannah still thinks the guy writing her all this poetry when she's
It's
gone
Chris.
for a week or whatever is Chris.
He just
She's
sent
in
a
love.
few.
She's falling in love because of these letters she's reading,
Yeah.
because they're so beautiful. And she comes back early from her
Well,
vacation.
she was gone less than a week, and he had sent over 20 letters to her.
Steve Martin did. And he didn't bother telling Chris that he was sending
No.
the damn letters until the Shelley Duvall's character says, "Hey, she's back early." And he's like, "What?" And while he's talking to Shelley Duvall, Dixie, he's writing another letter to Daryl Hannah. And Dixie tells CD, "Hey, she's back. She came back early." He runs out of Dixie's cafe and he leaves the letter there that he was writing. Dixie, being his best friend and confidant, and just, what's CD writing? She picks it up, she starts looking at it, she like looks around a little bit, makes sure nobody's looking, opens up the letter, she's reading the letter. And did you notice this was a great bit of acting on Shelley Duvall's part? She started reading that, and you could see her heart thump in her eyes. Like her eyes got really wide. She had the same type of reaction to that letter that Daryl Hannah's character was having when she read those letters.
Yeah.
And then she realized real quick what he was doing, that he was not writing and giving these letters in his name. He was writing them for somebody else. And she takes that letter, she slides it through the mail slot over it,
because that's what a friend would do.
Which is what a good friend would actually do.
Yeah.
And that's just such a good scene. I just love the fact that when she looks at the letter and starts reading it, you can see in Shelley Duvall's eyes, like if she got that letter from him, she would have fallen in love with him. Like that's like any woman would just be like, "Oh my God."
They did a good job of showing just how powerful his poetry was, and I thought that was really cool.
And when he finally started talking to her himself, like when he was telling her and talking to her, Roxanne was like, "Oh my God, I want you to read the letter." And he's like, "Well, I don't want to read the letter." She's like, "No, I want you to read this letter." And he's reading it, and he's trying to break it up so it doesn't sound so good.
She already knows.
She already knows because she already read the back of the letter that freaking Dixie writes. But the acting, I tell you, man, every character, there is no character that is not utilized in the proper way. There's one funny scene in there about the boxing that wasn't needed, but it tells you a lot about the character of what was his name? I'm sorry, Pollard's character, Andy. He's just this little guy, and you just think that he would be pushed over by everybody, but he's knocked one of the other firemen out. They don't even show it. The guy's just
that was
there.
funny.
And he's like, "Oh, he'll be okay. He'll be okay." He's like, "Yeah, he owes me $50." He walks away. But it's a little character building moment for Andy.
There's a lot of that. One of the things that just cracked me up was when you see CD returning to the fire station and it's on fire.
Hey guys,
there's the joke, folks.
Fires out.
Not start them.
And then when they're finally in the training process and they have to start a fire.
Oh God, that was funny. And Andy's on fire. One of the firemen's on fire.
Oh God, it's so funny.
It is a funny movie.
Like a building moment, and it's really good. The writing in this, it was Steve Martin was the main writer of Roxanne, the movie. But what I like is he gave credence, or he gave a co-writer's position, for lack of a better term, to Edmund Rostand, who is the guy who wrote Cyrano de Bergerac. And I was
That
like,
makes sense.
oh my God, that makes perfect sense. No, I don't know that anybody's ever done that
Yeah.
before that or since then. I don't
Because
know that anybody's ever come up.
the story is not new. This setup is not new. This is the first time I've seen it actually call out with, I mean, all the characters keeping the names for the most part.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
CD, Cyrano de Bergerac, and
right,
Chris versus Christian, and on. So I
right.
thought that was really cool that it was adapted at that level.
Exactly,
It made
exactly.
it timeless.
And it's such a good, this, I don't want to say it's my favorite because Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid will always be my favorite.
Mm.
But this is up there, man. This is,
This
if
was
you
good.
had to
This
pick, if
was
I had to
really
pick
good.
out 5 top movies for Steve Martin, this would be in the top 3. This would definitely be in the top 3 of those, of that 5. This is really well acted. It's got a stellar cast. Steve Martin did an outrageous job writing it. And like I said, the only other person he's got as a credit is Edmund Rostand,
Which is cool.
which means he took that story, loved the story so much, and adapted it himself. So, bravo to Steve Martin for that.
Yeah.
The director was
Don't
Shepsey?
ask me. Yeah.
Fred, hold on. Fred Fred Shapezi. And that directing in this is really good. The editing
Yeah.
is fantastic. There's a
Yeah.
couple
I
of moments
have.
that get edited, and it's a minor edit. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's done really well.
There's no.
But
I've got no real criticism of this movie.
no, nothing
Uh,
negative. Nothing negative at all that I can think of. Like, I can't think of anything that I'd be like, oh, but I would have done this different. Because no, there's
it
not.
it it
There's nothing that I
works.
would do different to make this story work any better. Because
No.
it's Cyrano de Bergerac. He kept Cyrano alive at the end of the movie, and that works for me. That's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
never understood. Why are you guys killing off Cyrano?
It is a good 80s movie. It is definitely
Oh
an
yeah,
80s film.
okay. The soundtrack, the music could be a little different, but that's me.
Sure.
It's
Absolutely.
very 80s soundtrack.
It's
Very 80s movie
it's
soundtrack.
very 80s. Thank you for bringing that up because I thought of that. It's like, okay, these aren't even B-sides. These are some 80s bands. And that could be completely wrong, man. If there was some licensed music in here, then oh God, I feel bad that I've just insulted a bunch of people. But that's what it sounded like, It just
It,
is like
I
these.
think
It
they,
sounded close to stuff at the time,
yeah, yeah,
and it's like, okay,
very
yeah, you're going
digital,
for synth.
very
Yep,
synthetic
yep,
synth. Um, but other than that, and there's only 1 or 2 little times that it actually stuck out really bad for me.
yeah.
The
I think I
one
know
point is
where.
when they're about ready to kiss at the end,
Yeah,
and that synth. I was just like, oh, if they would have just used the saxophone was really good, but then you can hear the synth underneath, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
they should have just went with like a smooth jazz.
yeah.
It would have
I
been
agree.
perfect. But other than that, I mean, that's I got to pick out something. That's such a tiny nothing.
It is a tiny
It's not
nothing.
like
It's
the
a
Green Knight soundtrack, which is terrible. It's
uh, I haven't
the
watched it.
Green. It's a story of Sir Gwen, I believe,
Hmm.
uh, have trying to lop off the Green Knight's head, and then the knights are,
Right.
oh, it's my turn. And he's like, oh, well, I have a year to live, and go sow my oats, kind of thing. And the music, and if I think it's Sir Gwen. And the movie's pretty good, but the soundtrack is fucking awful in that
Yeah.
movie. It's got Sean Connery as the Green Knight, and it's
Oh,
just
so that's the older one,
yeah,
the older Green.
yeah,
Because I was about to ask, didn't Sean Connery do a Green Knight movie? So
yeah.
that's the one you're
That's
referring
the
to,
one.
not the new one with I think Dev Patel or whatever. Yeah. So
No,
which
there
I
was
haven't
a new
seen it.
one.
There is, yeah, about
Okay,
1 to 2 years ago. Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know about that one. That shows you how out of touch I am with
Yes,
movie
I've been meaning to
shows.
watch it, just hadn't got around to it. So, but I remember the
Yeah,
Sean Connery
the
one.
Sean Connery one is good. I mean, the acting's pretty good, but yeah, the sound design
Yeah,
is, if I remember correctly, the music was just like none of it fit. None of it fit. But this was just just one or two little moments that I realized, they could have done better. But
Yeah.
that's it. They're just like, that didn't take me out of the movie. It's just one of those things that I'm like in the back of my head, like, I wish they would have done a lot different. The old lady loves this movie. By the end of the movie, she's like, he is in this movie everything a woman would want. Why would you even care what his nose looks like? And I'm like, no, you got me. I mean, he's 2 out of 3 things, that every woman wants. And even then with the big nose, he's not too bad. Look at him, you know what to do with it.
Well, he makes a comment on what he could do with it.
He does make a comment. And one of the little old ladies behind him. Oh, you mean the size of your nose would think, oh.
So that was
kept showing up was terrific.
That was one of my favorite scenes is when I don't know why was he making up this story to get them to go over to her house? I was trying to figure that out.
Because that was the first night Chris was there. That he gets Chris in there, and then he's like, "Oh shit, what did I just do?"
Oh, so okay, yeah.
So he's like, all of a sudden, those little ladies all run over there. They'll wake, they'll disturb them.
Wake, oh yeah, but it tells them that there's some aliens who are looking to have sex with older women, and they're like, "Well, it's been a while." They take off.
I like the one old lady. She's like, "Do you really believe that? Do you really think?" Well, let's go find out.
And they just shuffle off down the side.
No, this way.
Love it.
The little old lady's just showing up. Everybody, Fred Willard is the mayor, and he's on the fire department. So stupid. What a dumb mayor.
All idiots. When they took the fire truck, they drove the fire truck home with the ladder all the way extended.
Don't back up. Don't back up. And these guys, just not a good group of guys. Not the first group of guys you'd call to come put out a fire. Let me put it that way.
By the end, they had.
Yeah, by the end, they fixed it. But yeah,
they did.
Right
so
off the bat, you're like,
that's a funny little side story running back there. What's going on with the fire department? I thought that was pretty cool and well done.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I personally really enjoyed this movie. I definitely recommend it. It's a fun romantic comedy. You will laugh out loud. I watched it on Tubi. It's the only place I could find it streaming, but it's also available for rent. Yeah. So thanks again to Tubi. And Dave, your final thoughts on the movie?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely watch this movie. If you like romantic comedies, if you like Steve Martin, if you like Daryl Hannah, because that's all 3 things right there. Especially hot Daryl Hannah, which is, she's still hot. I mean, whatever. But the story is really good. The story sticks very closely to Cyrano de Bergerac. And Steve Martin, who knew Steve Martin could actually play a romantic lead? I know there's L.A. Story that he did much later, and that's a good romantic comedy, but it's still, this is his first foray into that. I think that you're just like, wow, he can do this. He can actually do it and make it work. So watch it, see it. It's good. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
I definitely recommend it. Definitely. So, folks, if you like what you hear or have seen, hit the like, hit the share, hit the subscribe. Thanks again to all our new listeners and viewers. We very much appreciate all the feedback and likes, and hit us up with what you want to hear, what you want to see, and we'll be back next week with another old-ass movie to talk about.